Normally, I don't get to build stuff for myself. All my time is spent working on projects for other people, but I was in the need of a larger humidor, and I've made some whiskey cabinets for other folks in the past, so this was a good opportunity for me to make a matching set. I went out and got some 6/4 walnut, and I had some ash on hand, so that's what I'm using for this project. Normally, I take the time to do the design and SketchUp, but I really wasn't sure what I wanted this to look like, so I sat down and just started sketching some stuff out. I did know that I wanted to do dovetails. This is only my second time doing dovetails, and for those who've done dovetails, you know that attempting them on, 1.25 inch thick ash and walnut is very difficult. But either way, that's what I was going to attempt on this project. Once I had my material planed down, I hit it with some mineral spirits to see the grain I was working with, and then started doing some rough cuts to break the stuff down. I recently bought a new joiner, but during this project I did not have it, so all my joint work is done with a good old-fashioned hand plane. I've got an old candle there that I rub on the bottom. The wax helps the plane slide against the wood surface. After I got all the boards cleaned up, I laid them out in the orientation that I thought would be best with the grain pattern, and then I went and labeled everything. With building two simultaneous cabinets, I wanted to be sure that I didn't get any of these pieces mixed up. I brought the boards inside to my kitchen table and just took my time laying out the placement of all the dovetails. I built this jig to help me cut these dovetails. I knew that I would be using thick material, and I don't have a good dovetail saw. I don't have the Cat Moses dovetail jig or anything like that, so I really did need something like this to help me cut these. Doing this by hand with a pull saw, at least with the pull saws that I have, there's no way I would have been successful, especially on 1.25 inch thick ash and walnut. So this jig was very helpful. However, it still took a considerable amount of work over at the hand tool station. The chisels I have are just cheap chisels from, Harbor Freight. I think I got them. I don't even remember, but they are sharp. I do have a good sharpening setup, but, the quality of steel probably isn't the best. And you'll notice too, my hand tool workstation really isn't set up for doing dovetails. I wish I had some bench dogs that would clamp these down, but I don't. So this was very tedious. I really hoped that the jig would save a lot of time, but it's not shown in this video, but I spent a whole lot of time with those chisels getting everything cleaned up. It took a lot of back and forth, going back over the table saw jigs and going back and forth with the chisels, doing dry fits, trying to get everything to fit together. When you're doing dovetails, the thicker your stock is, the more difficult, because it takes into account, if your angles are off a little bit, it's exacerbated across the length of that wood, so it was very difficult getting these to fit right, and there were some gaps in it. I wasn't really happy with them, but I had so much time invested in it, I just had to move on, chalk it up to a life experience. Like, again, this is only my second time doing them, so I'm sure my third time will be better. The joint work on these drawers is pretty simple. I was going to do dovetails, but this project was taking so long and it was such a nightmare doing the dovetails on the carcass of the cabinet. I didn't have it in me to do any more dovetails. I had to move on and get this thing done so I could work on other projects. You'll notice that the drawers are different. I used a mix of cherry, walnut, and oak. It was a good opportunity for me to use some scrap that I had laying around. Here I'm cutting down the pieces that are going to be used for the glass door frame for the humidor. Just doing a whole bunch of guess and check here at the table saw, just going back and forth, taking off a hair at a time until I have a nice fit. I saw someone else on YouTube do their splines this way for reinforcing their corners on frames, and you just set up a little stop block there, and I've got my dado stack in. I'm just slowly cutting these corners out, and then all you got to do is throw your spline in there, and it's that simple. You don't need a big 45-degree jig or anything like that. This works really well. Got a piece of scrap ash that I'm just running through the planer and just taking a little bit off at a time, back and forth, guess and check, until I got a nice snug fit for that spline. Then I'm just using a flush trim bit to take off the excess of the spline sticking out. initially mounted the door, it was hitting, so I'm just marking the spots here where I need to remove some material. The insides of humidors are typically lined with Spanish cedar, but for this one I'm just using American red cedar because it's cheaper. Here I'm cutting some thin pieces and doing box joints for the trays that are going to hold the cigars. I ended up filling all the gaps in the dovetails with sawdust and wood glue, let it dry overnight, and then coming back, cleaning everything up. This was a huge nightmare. My fit wasn't quite right. There was about a 1/16 of an inch where the dovetails protruded, and this ash is super hard wood, much harder than walnut is, so it was just very difficult getting this all trimmed down. I sanded everything up to 240 grit and then I water popped it. That's when you hit it with a damp rag and it's going to clean out the dust that's in the wood fiber, and then it's also going to have the wood stand up. Any loose fibers are going to stand up on end, and then you sand it again and it's going to produce a real nice finish. For finish, I'm using clear high gloss spray lacquer. Lacquer is pretty easy to use and it looks really nice on walnut. You do not need to sand in between coats, which is a benefit, but one of the cons to lacquer is the amount of fumes that it puts off. You should really be wearing a respirator when you use it. To mount the pane of glass inside the door, I'm just laying down a thin bead of silicone around the perimeter, and that'll be more than enough to hold it in place, and then if it ever breaks for whatever reason, it'll be easy for me to swap it out with a new piece. I designed these cabinets so that they sit flush against the wall. The best way to do that is to use a French cleat system. So I had to make sure that the back panel was recessed enough to fit the back panel and the French cleat as well. This is what I get for using cheap Amazon hinges. The screws that came with the hinges ended up breaking off inside the wood, and the hinges had a lot of play in it, so my door just wasn't shutting right. I ended up replacing them with a black piano hinge. I didn't like how the cigar trays turned out either, so I decided to start over and make 3 new ones. much happier with how these new trays turned out. When I first envisioned doing a humidor, this is more in line with what I pictured in my head these trays would look like. I'm also redoing how I mounted them. Those angled pieces of wood were no good, so now I'm doing something a little bit more professional and reliable. The fit inside the humidor was pretty tight, so here I'm just routing out about a 16-inch recess for those metal clips to fit inside, and that's going to be enough to hold these trays in place. This was a tough project, and I'm really glad that it's over and I can now just sit back and enjoy it, show it off to all my friends, and share it with everybody that's watching this video. But I will say there's a lot that I learned from this. There's a lot that I'm not happy with. Not happy with the dovetails. I'm not happy with some of the other joint work. I know that I'm capable of doing a lot higher quality work, but this is how you learn. You take on projects that are tough and you learn a lot along the way.